Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I will be sharing my thoughts on the Arabasta Saga of One Piece, including the following arcs: Reverse Mountain, Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, Drum Island, and of course, Arabasta itself. And I am not really sure, is it Arabasta or Alabasta in the version that I'm reading? It says Alabasta with an L. I know that in Japanese, the R and the L kind of get mushed together. There's not much distinction there. So I don't know, with the character Zoro as well, it was written Zolo. I don't know which it is, and perhaps because ambiguity is a theme in One Piece that I'm picking up on, maybe it doesn't even matter if I say Arabasta or Alabasta, but if you feel like letting me know your preference in the comments, feel free. I'm going to say Arabasta though, partially because I feel like the culture of Arabasta is in fact based on Arabia. So it would kind of make sense to have an R there, but I am open to whatever people prefer. But that's what I'll go with for now. And also, just so you know, I am only reading the manga. I am not watching the anime as of this point anyway. Maybe I'll try it out at some point. I do think I'll probably try the live action One Piece film that was recently made. I hear good things about it, so I'm just curious. But let's see. But do forgive me because I am reading the manga only. My pronunciations may be off. Again, if you want to correct me in the comments, feel free. But just know that I have not actually heard any of these names. I'm also trying not to look up things because I'm trying very hard to avoid spoilers. So I do appreciate you making an effort to avoid spoilers in the comments. I've only finished at this point through the Arabasta Saga. So that said, oh man, there's so much to talk about here in this saga. Initial thoughts are that this reminds me, in some ways, tonally it's very different, but in some ways it does remind me of the premise of Gulliver's Travels. And I know that people mentioned in the comments in my previous video that there is a strong influence here from Journey to the West, which is a very important text. It's been translated here in the West as Monkey. And that is something I think I will probably try to read someday just because of its vast influence on many other stories. Also, by the way, while I'm on that topic of people leaving comments, I really want to thank everybody from the One Piece community who not just checked out the video, but you guys left some amazing, supportive, wonderful, encouraging comments. And I just want to express my appreciation for that. That's incredible. I had no idea there would be this kind of response to my initial video, and I just really floored, frankly, by the kindness and the generosity. I think it really speaks well of a fandom when people reach out and with kindness, and it's great. I think that says a lot about One Piece, perhaps, as well. But anyway, I was talking about Gulliver's Travels, which is a 18th century text by Jonathan Swift, in which the main character Gulliver goes to various different islands around the world and encounters very different creatures, some humanoid, some not, but various races, and learns a few things in the process. Now, it is tonally, as I said, very different. It's a lot more pessimistic than One Piece. One Piece is joyful, it's exuberant, it's fun. Whereas I think Gulliver's Travels, it's fair to say, is fairly gloomy, especially as it ends. But there are some interesting parallels. Thematically speaking, there are some things in Gulliver's Travels about colonialism and its impact on native peoples, about greed, about politics. And there's a kind of very cynical take on many things, including politics and other professions like medicine, where there are people taking advantage of other people. There's corruption. There's a lot of really cool themes in there. It's basically an exploration of humanity. And I feel like there's a lot of that going on in One Piece as well, but again, in a more positive way, in a more exuberant way. So I just thought I'd throw that out there because there is the exploration theme, which really seems to be the guiding thing here in One Piece, that we're exploring these different places now that we're on the Grand Line. Speaking of which, this whole thing starts with Reverse Mountain. We make it to the Grand Line, and there our initial encounter is with Laboon, the whale. And inside Laboon, of course, there's Crocus, whom our crew, the Straw Hat crew, they meet. And it's a really wonderful little, very short arc here within Arabasta. And I love some of the things that come up for me, at least. So one of the things that I feel this reminds me of very obviously is the story of Jonah and the whale, because our heroes end up inside of Laboon. And Jonah and the whale is a story, it's a biblical story where the prophet Jonah ends up inside a whale because he refuses to preach a message of mercy and grace and forgiveness to the wicked city, I think, city of Nineveh, I believe it is. At any rate, these themes of forgiveness and grace are part of the original story. And I also feel that there may be a bit of a nod to Moby Dick, the idea of obsession. In the novel by Melville, you have Moby Dick and being chased by Ahab, the character who's obsessed with catching this whale. So in this little arc, though, what you have is devotion. You have loyalty, with Laboon's absolute, utter devotion to his friends, the pirates, who have possibly abandoned him. Possibly, we're not sure at this point. I'm sure we'll find out what happened to these pirates who have gone off on their adventure quest, whatever it might be. But also loyalty on the part of Crocus to Laboon, who is caring for him. And so you have this theme of friendship, which is huge in here. Lots of stuff being foreshadowed, I think, in regard to loyalty and devotion and friendship. So that is really just wonderful. And we're introduced also to the characters Mr. Nine and Ms. Wednesday, and the latter taking on a whole lot of significance throughout this arc, as she turns out to be Princess Vivi, but that's later on when we learn that. But we have to proceed to Whiskey Peak, where we first meet the really, on a larger scale, the Baroque works, where we find out who these villains are. And there's some really cool highlights here. There's some fun stuff, like for example, I have a very juvenile sense of humor, so I was amused by the booger bombs of Mr. Five. Also, significantly, we meet the person who turns out to be Igaram, and of course, Vivi, although they're first introduced to us as Mr. Eight and Wednesday. But we have some great stuff going on at this moment. One thing that I noticed is Luffy and Zoro getting into a fight. And they do seem to have a kind of a wonderful brotherly relationship here, where they are not going to hesitate to get at each other's throats. And I love that Luffy just dives in with this actually ill-founded assumption that Zoro had been mean to their hosts. And that also, I think, is an important theme, with Luffy just diving in without thinking. That's going to come up again here. And I do feel like this part of I alluded to the morality that Luffy is going to be learning in the course, I assume, of this whole adventure. So that's an important moment, I felt, was that misunderstanding that was caused by Luffy being a little too precipitous in that moment. Of course, he was upset because he was thinking that Zoro was mean to their hosts, who were actually villains. So things had to get explained to him. Another important thing that comes up here is Vivi, and who explains all about Arabasta and Crocodile. We learn the name Crocodile here, who is one of the 7 pirate warlords, or whatever it might be. I might have that slightly off. But is a very powerful individual who is manipulating things off in Arabasta, fomenting a essentially civil war between those loyal to the king and the rebels. We'll get into that later. But that is introduced. We also meet some characters like Ms. All Sunday, who immediately seems like a very mysterious figure. Which side is she on? She seems to be working with the Baroque works, so one of the villains. But she also oddly helps the Straw Hat crew with the Eternal Pose to help them on their way. So not quite trusting her really at this point at all. Seems villainous overall, but there's some mysterious element to her, which I find intriguing. But there's a theme going on here, I think, in regard to not just Ms. All Sunday, but to a lot of things, and that is the theme of uncertainty. Things being more complex than just the surface level, being more nuanced than just good versus evil. And you could see that with, for example, in a minor way, Luffy's precipitousness and attacking Zoro, not understanding that things are more complex than it appears on the surface. And that applies to characters as well, like Vivi, who was Wednesday, and Igaram, who was Mr. 8. As it turns out, they're not as villainous as we first thought. So That's a theme that keeps coming up here. I think what Oda is doing in here in the series, as I see it at this point, is pretty cool, actually, regarding this theme of uncertainty and things not being exactly what you at first assume. And we live in a world today where a lot of times people want to categorize, people want to label, people want to say, that's good, that's bad. These are the people who agree with me, good. These are the people who don't, bad. And life is more complex than that. And I love that One Piece is taking on this theme. When we move on to Little Garden, we can see more of that, but also some other cool themes that I think are really intrinsic to One Piece that I love what Oda is doing. Here is where we meet not only a bunch of big old dinosaurs, I love the chaos of this. I mean, every island having some different real world inspirations. And you can clearly see in Dory and Bragi a kind of Norse-inspired theme going on here. They are warriors of Elbef. So this island, Little Garden, is not their native home. They're from Elbef, which is somewhere else. I don't know much about it. But it is a place that celebrates heroism of a certain brand, which feels very Norse to me. And I love how Usopp particularly finds this notion very attractive, that Usopp is very drawn to the bravery of these individuals, their dedication to honor and glory. And that is very appealing for a character like Usopp, who's going through his own journey of finding his own bravery, which, again, as I said in the last video, I find this very compelling. I love this aspect of Usopp, who really, I feel like, if we're all going to be honest with ourselves, we probably see a lot of Usopp in ourselves. And finding that place where we can be brave in the moment where our biggest instinct is to run away. So he really loves these two giants and their dedication, their absolute devotion to honor and glory. And that is a very Norse thing. There's a kind of a warrior code here, pagan Germanic warrior code of giving one's all. And they are fighting over what it turns out to be a quarrel over whose fish was bigger, which turns out to be kind of a trivial thing. So I feel like this is, again, a fairly nuanced exploration of what you could see as simply, wow, glory and honor and all that. But I feel like Oda actually is exploring this from both sides, because there is a harmful side to this as well. You know, where is the line that you can cross where devotion to a cause or to a code of honor is a good thing, but if you take that too far, you can actually be destructive. And that is something that he's exploring a lot in this series, and it's really cool to have it encapsulated here in these two giants. But this is something, again, it's very Norse. All this stuff about friendship and loyalty and sacrifice, these are all themes that are going to come up again. And again, it's ambiguous. You can take these things too far. When does devotion become insanity, in other words? And this goes back to the Norse sagas. I don't know how many sagas Oda has read or if this was deliberate on his part, but it really reminded me of the Norse sagas and also the Edda. The Edda describes, you probably have heard of Valhalla, in this place where all these warriors go. They were taken by the Valkyrie because they died in battle. They're called the Einherjar. And these warriors, they fight all day long, and then they feast at night. And then, of course, they might die, but they come back the next day and start the cycle all over again. Very much reminding me of the quarrel, the ongoing quarrel between Dory and Bragi, and their just dedication, their love of this, of all of this quarreling and fighting and everything. This ideal is encapsulated in an Old English poem as well called The Battle of Malden. It describes a fight between a group of Vikings that had come to raid and some local Englishmen. And the Englishmen were losing this battle very badly. Their lord, Berchnoth, had been killed in the course of the battle. His head was chopped off. And the warriors were going down, and they knew they were going to die. They could have run away, but there's a group of them just staying to fight to the last, to either avenge their lord or die in the process of trying. And one of the warriors says, in the poem at least, probably not in real life, but in the poem, one of the warriors says, Hia share the herdra herta the kendra mod shaldamara the uramayan litlath, which in modern English, that's Old English, in modern English means something like, our purpose shall be the harder or the firmer, our hearts shall be the keener, our courage shall be greater as our strength lessens. And this is the warrior code that we're seeing played out here with Dory and Bragi. Really great stuff. I think it's not something that would be foreign to Japanese culture, obviously, as well. You have the samurai. I read the manga Vagabond, which really portrays this heroic code beautifully as well. So you can see that same devotion to the way of the sword, right? And so it's something that he could have easily gotten from Japanese culture as well. But yeah, we learn more about the Baroque works here with Mr. 3 and his waxy ways. Also, a little shout out to Sanji and the snail phone. That's not what it's called, but I can't remember what it's called. But he has his moment of cleverness there, almost accidental cleverness. But I love how in this saga, Sanji is increasingly seen as a kind of a clever guy, clever player, as it were. Also, you can see the budding friendship with Vivi, some really heartwarming moments between her and the crew, but also some tensions here and there as well. And again, that is reflected, mirrored in the relationship between Dory and Broggy. Also, love the sacrifice of Dory and Broggy at the end of this little arc, and how they make the way open for the Straw Hat crew, and how their weapons are broken there at the end, which I think signals something that is a big change in their relationship. That they have realized that these 100 years, this century of quarreling is a bit silly, perhaps. And they can't even remember what it was about. And as it turns out, we see in a flashback, it's about whose fish was bigger. And that is also, by the way, interestingly mirrored in the quarrel between Sanji and Zoro, who are fighting about whose meat is bigger, whose dinosaur that they caught is bigger. It's a pretty clever echo there of the quarrel between Dory and Broggy, suggesting that maybe there's a bit of futility to this, that sometimes it's better to be more humble and understanding of one another. And then, of course, we leave Drum Island, and the first thing that happens really is that Nami falls sick, and this is a cause of deep concern, and we really see the devotion of the crew to her. She is one of the Straw Hat crew. She is one of the family. And Luffy is, of course, very distressed, as is everyone else. But he rushes to fight because he is very concerned about her. But he is checked in this moment by Vivi. And he has to learn that your first response isn't always to use your fists. That sometimes you have to ask for help. And I really love that moment. I feel like this is one of these important little moments to point to if we're looking at Luffy as a character and where he's coming from and where he's going, what he's learning. It's just a beautiful moment with a bit of humility where he apologizes for being too precipitous there. And of course, we meet the villain Wapol, the pirate who turns out to be a deposed king who wants his kingdom back. And I love the contrast between Wapol in this Drum Island arc. The contrast between Wapol and the character Dalton, who used to be Walpole's chief military guy. I forget the exact title, but it's a really great dichotomy there that's set up between an individual in Walpole who is very self-serving, who views government as a way to enrich himself. And you have Dalton, who is a true servant of the people, who views a nation as a communal thing, as a place where people should be helping one another, where those in power have a duty to help those that they are serving. So the difference between ruling to enrich oneself and ruling to be a servant leader. Really great theme there. And that is also, I think, picked up on with Princess Vivi and her vision for Arabasta and her father as well, the king. So that's I think, a theme that is definitely deliberately being put forward here, maybe even foreshadowed in Drum Island for what's going to happen with Arabasta. But yeah, that's a great little contrast there. What is a just society? That's a question that is being asked, I think, here in the manga. Do we just accept greed as the way of things, and that people are always going to have people on the top and the rest of the schmucks under them? Or do we try for a better society? And this is encapsulated in the idea that you have these 20 doctors who are essentially forced by the system to serve those in power, where the rest of the society gets neglected. This is pretty relevant to modern society, in fact. This is something you could talk about in terms of healthcare today in many places. I think it's a really kind of fun, and like this, the tone of One Piece is always going to be fun, but there is a serious exploration of something important going on in the real world there as well. And the crew itself is looking for a doctor. Now, that's, tied into this whole little arc very beautifully, I think. So in this particular arc, we do meet very interesting contrasting people. Again, in Hiruluk, the doctor, the quack, as everyone dismisses him, he's the dreamer, okay? And then you also have the witch, Kuroha. I'm not sure if I'm saying any of these names right. I do apologize if I'm butchering them. But she is the realist. And I love the contrast that Oda sets up between these two, especially as both are mentor figures for Chopper, who serves as a great figure for exploring the ideas, many ideas that we've been talking about, like sacrifice and friendship, the pursuit of ideals, but also what it means to pursue a dream. And there's some beautiful moments in this arc as well. For example, I loved how there was that one moment with the snowbirds in the cannon, and that is what defeats Walpole in the moment when he's about to blast Luffy. I love that he was defeated by something as little and beautiful as these snowbirds. Also, favorite moment in this arc, and one of my favorite moments in the entire One Piece so far, is definitely the cherry blossoms in the snow. What a wonderful thing. And of course, when you think about the rich symbolism of cherry blossoms around the world, but probably particularly in Japan, cherry blossoms are an obvious symbol of life, of spring, of renewal, but also because they're so ephemeral, they're so fleeting, they also are a symbol at the same time of death. You have life and death, you have beauty and sorrow, you have vibrancy, but that vibrancy is so brief, very poignant. I really love that moment. And it isn't exactly real cherry blossoms, but you had the fulfillment of this guy's dreams. Hiruluk, the quack doctor, the one who's dismissed by everybody as the impractical dreamer. And you have the realization of his dream, which makes the world, even if it's brief, a more beautiful place. I love that, especially in the context of One Piece being all about the relentless pursuit of dreams. All of our characters, all the Straw Hat crew, they all have their dreams. I talked about this in my last video. And it's beautiful. It's something that I relate to as a writer, as a human being, and I'm sure many people find it very resonating, this idea of pursuing one's dreams, no matter how silly they might seem to other people. And the realization of them makes the world a beautiful place, even if it's just for a little while. I also love the idea in this little arc of finding friendship in the character of Chopper, who is clearly an outsider. In Chopper, you have an other, someone who is regarded as a monster. And it is within a few individuals' ability to see that individual not as a monster, but as a person. And this is crucial. This is a beautiful part of One Piece as well. The Fellowship rests on this notion of friendship, of recognizing oneself in the other, of seeing the humanity in each other. And I just love that. I love that Chopper gets to join the crew. And I love that he gets to pursue his dream, a dream that was instilled in him by Hiruluk. And that it tears him apart a little bit, though, because he has his loyalty to his home and to his friends there. But he also has this dream of going out and seeing the world. And he has his new friends to do that with. So I love that. I love that it is not just an easy decision for him as well. That is painful. That he has to be pushed along the way by Kuroha and her antics, pretending to be mad at him and all of that. That's a great reverse psychology, something that is used really well in One Piece, I have noticed, where characters have to pretend to be mad at somebody in order to give them that little kick in the pants that gets them going. Really great stuff. Also, I think it was cool that we saw for the first time, and I think we only learned this later, but the character Ace comes up, I believe, in Drum Island at the end, who also, interesting, has a D in his name, the initial D, and it turns out that he is Luffy's brother, also someone who has some of the devil fruit. In his case, he has the flame stuff going on. I forget what his fruit is called. There's so many devil fruits in this saga, which is fine with me. It's not something I'm ever going to really keep track of. I'm not going to be that kind of a reader where I'm able to name who's got what devil fruit. I have a good idea of what they can do with it, at least, but that's as far as I'm going to go. But also, Who else has a D in their name is revealed. Very interesting. Gol D. Roger. This is something that's pointed out at the end of this arc by Kuroha, who, when she sees the wanted poster of Luffy, makes this connection for us. So now I'm wondering, is Gold Roger in some way, shape, or form related to Luffy? That's an interesting little, Easter egg that's probably going to lead to something bigger down the road. And I feel like the introduction of Ace as a character is no accident as well, almost really at the same time. So interesting stuff going on there. I'll see where that goes. Maybe I'm on the wrong trail, but I feel like there was a signpost there that you should be paying attention to, perhaps. And then we finally get to Arabasta itself, which is probably my favorite arc so far that I've read. I'm sure there'll be great ones to come. But here you have a nation divided. You have the rebels versus the king. You have a charlatan and a populist in the figure of Crocodile who's manipulating the people very cynically. He's not just taking advantage of people, but he's actively causing this division within them by being deceptive. And manipulating the weather and making it rain in one place and dry in another, and using his ability to create sand and all of that. And again, I really feel that this idea of division between people that is based on misunderstanding and that is sometimes inflamed by individuals who are trying to empower themselves through hate. This is very relevant to the real world, folks. You can look at time after time after time in human history and even in the present world where people have tried to empower themselves through these kinds of methods. It's a script for a dictator. Hate is a way of pointing out a scapegoat and grabbing power. Some really great, flamboyant, wonderful characters introduced here as well. You have Mr. 2, Bon Clay, who is encountered and initially is a kind of a friend, even though he's working for the bad guys. There is a moment there of friendship there, which actually is important for later on. And I love the ambiguity. Again, ambiguity is huge here, guys. And you can see it in the character himself, Mr. 2, who has the male Mr. 2, but he also has the Bon Clay. So it's the female characters who work for this organization that have the names from the days of the week. So this character is both male and female, is ambiguous, is non-binary. The iffiness, as it's called in the translation I read, the iffiness of this character, I think is important. And the complexity of this character, something I really appreciated. So really great stuff. Also love the moment when the characters, as a result of encountering this dodgy character, Mr. 2 Bon Clay, also are forced to put the bandages on their arm. Actually, it's the left arm, isn't it? Yeah, left arm, and I think it's the forearm. But we learn later on that this is actually a trick within a trick, because they have the mark inside there as well, which has significance. It's the mark that is on Chopper's hat. It is also, you could see it as the crossbones on a pirate flag. Pirate flags being really important as well. I forgot to mention earlier that moment with Luffy and the flag in the Drum Island arc, and the symbolism of the flag, and what he insists that this flag means is the pursuit of one's dreams, is something that is unbeatable, is something to do with the human spirit itself. It is symbolic of all of that. So it's wonderful that is the mark that they have on their forearms. And yeah, this is a really fantastic, just crazy, I mean, lots of action, lots of chaos, lots of fights going on. But amidst all that, I think there's some great moments as well. And you have more ambiguity here in the character of Smoker. Smoker is an interesting character. When we first met him, he's set up as kind of a villain, but he has that brief moment where he encounters the little girl who accidentally bumps into him and spills her ice cream on him. And he has his, oops, my pants ate your ice cream, and gives her some money. And you realize that this guy's not an unambiguous bad guy here. He has a heart. He's somebody, maybe he's devoted to justice, but he has a heart. And you see it play out really beautifully in this arc, in the character of Smoker. I really like how he comes to understand the Straw Hat crew. They're not bad people, and that he gives them opportunities, even helps them. There's that moment when he's in the behind the bars with them, and I feel like he's going to be an interesting character to watch in the future because of that, because of his complexity, and that goes for his assistant as well. I'm forgetting her name, but I'll get back to her in a moment. But yeah, there's some really, really cool stuff here with Koza. More ambiguity. Koza is a character, very sympathetic, and you've got his father there. He's broken with his father. He's broken with the king. He wants what's best for his country. He believes some of the lies that have been told, that have been propagated by Crocodile. But he's not a character you ever hate. You're kind of rooting for him at the same time. And he has this wonderful friendship with Vivi that's really important. So I kind of love his place in the story. Just so many great shout outs I could be making here. Sanji has his moments of cleverness. You have this fantastic moment with Zoro fighting Mr. Number One, Mr. One, and having to get to that place within himself where he can cut steel. I love the character of Zoro. Just great stuff, cool, epic stuff with him. Also, Nami and Usopp, being innovative and clever and trying their best, even though they're not as super powered as the rest of the crew, doing what they can to help out and taking on people with devil fruit powers, even in the process. Some really great cleverness there. And then you have Pell. Pell, the character, the guy from Arabasta, the Falcon guy. The Falcon being an important symbol there of their culture, of their sense of themselves. But his sacrifice, what an incredible moment. What great stuff. And I actually thought, oh, maybe characters can die in One Piece when he takes the bomb up into the air and kaboom. And it turned out that he wasn't dead. You get the little bit of a hint, more than a hint, really, it's fairly obvious that he somehow survived this, which I don't know how I feel about that. I thought he was a cool character, so I'm not upset that he's back. But at the same time, I thought, oh, wow, that makes it even more compelling that actually this guy died in making this sacrifice. What a, again, sacrifice. Big theme going on here. But I'm okay that he's back. I thought he was a cool character, so... I don't know if I'm just going to assume that no one dies in One Piece. Maybe I will find out that someone will, and it'll hit me hard if it does happen. But yeah, I love the moment from Pell there. And all the fight, how can I not mention the fights? Plural, because there's three of them. Luffy loses the first two fights with Crocodile. He actually loses, but it says something about his determination, his devotion, his friendship, because he does this for his friends. He does this for Vivi especially. His loyalty. And there's even some wonderful comedic stuff worked into his fights, which I actually really was laughing hard at when he has the water and a bit of it starts spouting out of his wounded belly button. And there's just some really fun stuff in the process. I mean, no wonder he's such a beloved character. His loyalty, his devotion to his friends, his goofiness, his understanding of people in spite of seeming like a bit of a doofus. He really understands people beautifully. He has a beautiful understanding of his fellow people. And maybe this is part of why Ms. All Sunday saves his life at that point, which I thought, okay, what is going on with this character, Ms. All Sunday? What is this? Because she seems like she's very much one of the bad guys. She's Crocodile's henchman, right hand, whatever you want. Right hand, good pun there, right? With her ability. So literally his right hand. But yeah, she's just like, what? Okay, so wait, why is she saving Luffy? And of course, in the end, she turns out to be a stowaway wanting to join the crew. What is this? So I feel like there's going to be more of Nico Robin, I believe is her actual name. That she is named Nico Robin. And this is an identity that she wants to keep hidden, I believe. So there's going to be some backstory or other, I'm sure, on the way, maybe in the next arc, about Nico Robin / All Sunday. And I'm very curious to see where that goes. But yeah, just so many great moments here. Crocodile is defeated and exposed. He is demoted, or his privileges are taken away. He's arrested or whatever. King Cobra's kingdom is restored. And you have this beautiful moment of the farewell that Vivi, during her speech, makes to her friends, the Straw Hat crew. Just, that was my probably most emotional moment for me in this saga. A bit like the Nami moment in the East Blue Saga when she asked Luffy for help. This was the most emotional moment for me with Vivi, obviously torn between her duty to her homeland and her vision that she wants to this place to be, and her ties to her new friends. And it's such a beautiful dilemma that I found myself very moved by it as well. So just great stuff, but I think there's a lesson in there too, that even though You may not always be physically present with your friends. That does not in any way, shape, or form diminish the friendship. That beauty will always be there. That will always be part of your life. And so, yeah, that's the note I guess I would like to finish on here with my thoughts on the Arabasta saga of One Piece, which I thoroughly enjoyed. You can consider me, I hope you will consider me one of the crew that I am now completely invested in in One Piece. I'm excited to see where this goes. I love this storytelling. I think there's some really beautiful, profound truths being explored in the midst of this fun, wonderful, crazy story. So I am on board. And that is it from me for now. Until next time.